day, or the last message in this particular chunk, because we're taking a year long. If you haven't noticed already, we're taking the entire year to look at the red letter words of Jesus. We call it Living in the Red, and little chunks of that are little sections. This particular section, perspective, this is it. This is the last one of the messages in that block today, and it's a biggie. It really is, because again, the whole idea with this section is to look at Jesus' perspective on everything. On church and missions and ministry and outreach. And today we're looking at Jesus' perspective on discipleship. And it's a good one. It's good that you guys are here. The text is going to be Matthew. And look, I almost said Mark. Matthew chapter 4 today. If you guys can go ahead and turn there now. We'll start in just a moment. Matthew 4. While you're turning there, I wanted to do something fun. Well, I always have fun up here anyway, but I wanted you guys to have fun along with me. I wanted to share some riddles. How many of you guys are good at riddles? Just by a show of hands. Okay, so here's the deal then, okay? Because a lot of smarty pants out there. Don't shout out the answer, okay? Wait till I ask for the answer. If you got it correct, that's cool. We'll move on, okay? Alright? So I'll ask it and I'll repeat it and then we'll ask for the answer. So don't blur them out, okay? Because some of you are going to be, I know I'm going to see steam. You're going to be thinking. And others of you, this is going to be a piece of cake, alright? Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. What do you call something that everyone asks for, everyone gives, everyone needs, but very few people take? I'll say it again. Don't blurt it out. What do you call something that everyone asks for, everyone gives, everyone needs, but very few people take? Any answers?
Advice.
Advice. Yeah, good job. See, you guys are good. This will be a breeze for you guys. Wow. Okay, I should have brought some more difficult ones in here today. Okay, next one. There's a point to this. Here's the next one. How do you name, again, don't shout them out. How do you name 3 consecutive days without using the words Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? So here it is again. How do you name 3 consecutive days without using the words Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Anybody know?
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You guys are good. See, this is super easy. I should have come in here really prepared. You know, what's your favorite color? Wrong! You know? My goodness. All right, last but not least, and this one's my personal favorite out of the 3. What cafeteria food do detectives love to eat? What cafeteria food do detectives love to eat?
Mystery meat.
Mystery meat. Good job. Who got that? John, of course. John, man, mystery meat. Good job. So you guys did really well with those. Look, here's why I started with riddles, and I should have come in with a little more difficult riddles. Although some of you, I know, because like I heard them for the first time, I was like, gosh, what is it? All right, tell me. And I got the answer, and I thought, oh, I knew that. Dummy, right? Because we think that, right? We make it more difficult. I think with riddles, what we do is we make them more difficult. And more complex than they really are, or than they really need to be. Do you agree? Yeah. For me, I know for sure, because I'm kicking myself thinking, I knew that. And I hear the next one, I'm like, I don't know what's the answer. Oh, and then I kick myself again thinking, stupid, it's so simple. Oh, but I'm trying to make it more difficult and make it more complex. And so, what I propose to you guys this morning is that we do the same thing when it comes to following Jesus. When it comes to being a follower, a disciple of Jesus Christ, we make it more difficult, we make it more complex than it really is, than it really needs to be. It's quite simple. You've heard me say that since I've been here. It's not easy, but it is simple. And so, in the text, we're going to understand this because Jesus is calling his first disciples in the text today. And we need to understand what it means, not from our perspective, what discipleship means, but Jesus' perspective. What his perspective is on what it means to be a disciple, to be a follower of his own. And listen, the word disciple is used 260 times in the New Testament. It's used 233 times alone just in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So it's a big deal. We need to understand what it means, again, from Jesus' perspective. So if you guys are ready, and I think you are, let's go ahead and start reading Matthew chapter 4. And it's on the screen behind me as well. Starting in verse 18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw 2 brothers, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Then he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." They immediately left their nets and followed him. Verse 21. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets. He called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Okay, so the text doesn't really give us a lot there. You know how I've always said that you got to dig down underneath the surface of the text to get some information sometimes? That's what we need to do with this today, because there's not a lot there. From the surface level, this is what we get. And if you're hearing this or reading this for the first time, which I don't suspect you are, but if you ever were and you read that, this is what you would get from it, okay? Or my perspective of what you would get from it. Jesus is just strolling along the beach one day. He's just chilling out, having a good old time, enjoying the sunrise, and it's beautiful. And he sees a couple guys in a boat, and he's like, "Guys, hey, come and follow me." And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And they drop their stuff, and they go and they follow him. They walk down the beach a little further, and they're like, "Hey, Jesus, there's some more guys." And he says, "All right, let's pick them up. Guys, come and follow me." And they're like, "Yeah." And they drop their nets, and they leave their dad, and they leave him behind, and they just start following and walk away. And you're wondering, what is that? Because that's kind of what the text shows, doesn't it? It doesn't really give us a lot there. And I'm sure that's not what happened. That's ridiculous, but a little funny though. But it didn't happen that way. You see, from a cultural perspective, you have to understand, back in Jesus' day, the dynamic was much different than what we look at today for teacher-student. In Jesus' day, a rabbi, a teacher, would just go and get disciples. That was one of the ways, not the only way. Okay, don't get me wrong, one of the ways. And they would just walk up and say, "Ken, follow me." And they would just say, okay. They would drop whatever. If a rabbi or one of the teachers walked up and said, "Follow me," you did drop what you were doing and you would follow them. And culturally, that was their culture. That was how it worked. It was the bond that was there between the teacher and the student. We'll get to that just a little bit deeper in just a moment. But again, then if you're looking at, okay, that sounds great, but then you take it from the text and it doesn't make sense, you have to build backwards and then move forward with it. You got to remember, Jesus, when he was 12, so he's 30-ish at this time of the text. When he was 12, he was in the temple. Remember? And they took the trip to Jerusalem, and he just kind of hung around back and stayed there, and he was talking with the big boys in the temple. He was having discussions there with some of these men that were very, very smart, very intelligent, very wise, and they were amazed at how Jesus was able to speak and the intelligence that he had, the knowledge that he had for only being 12 years old. And so that kind of reputation continued to grow and grow and grow over the years and develop more and more over the years as Jesus, of course, grew as well. And then you got these occasional individuals over here saying stuff like, "He's the Messiah. This guy, Jesus, I think he's the Messiah." So you got all this going around in this building. And you remember, Jesus now was known as teacher and rabbi. The disciples repeatedly, throughout their time with him, refer to him as rabbi and teacher. And so there's already that development there. So when Jesus comes along and he says, "Hey, follow me," now it makes more sense. Now it's not just a random, "Oh, sure, whatever." They already have this understanding that Jesus is a teacher, that he is a rabbi, that he has this past history that's coming along and growing, and hey, he might just be that guy who's the Messiah. So it makes more sense now when they drop everything and they follow him, and they become his disciples. Now, disciple just means a learner. By definition, it means a learner. And when we, in our Western culture mindset, we think of a teacher, student, we think of that dynamic as a classroom, right? We see the classroom where the teacher is there and the teacher gives information to the student, and the student does the best they can to take it in and absorb it and learn it and know it, and then they regurgitate it back out basically on a piece of paper. It's a test, right? And then that's kind of the defining lines. Did they learn what we taught them, or did they not? What do we need to focus on? It wouldn't have been like that in Jesus' day. When one of the rabbis would say, "Follow me," this was something that was much more intense. It was much deeper than just the average student-teacher dynamic that we have in America today. In fact, what I want to do, and this is, what would you expect? It's goofy, it's me. I want to show a video clip of what this really looked like. This was discipleship back in Jesus' day. This is what it looked like.
Allow me, Master.
Oh, thanks very much.
Walk this way. This way.
Silly? I don't know, maybe that's ridiculous. It's all good. Listen, honestly, that is a beautiful picture, a perfect picture of what discipleship looked like in Jesus' day. It wasn't like what we have, which is you get up in the morning, you go to school, you learn the most you can, you come home, and then you spend the evening with your family, you get up the next day, and it's rinse and repeat, and you get your weekends off. It wasn't like that. When a rabbi would walk up and say, "Follow me," that was it. You dropped what you were doing and you would follow them and you stayed with them. You were with this person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It often took many weeks. Sometimes it was many months, and sometimes it was even many years that you were with this person. It was a constant thing. The goal of it was you became like your teacher. You became like your rabbi. Everything you did, everything you said, you would part your hair the same. Kind of tough for me to do that, but that's okay. You'd part your hair the same, you'd grow your beard the same, you'd dress the same. Now, of course, for us following Jesus, we can't really follow that today because we'd all be wearing robes and we'd look goofy. But in a sense, our goal then, our objective is to be just like Jesus if we're His disciples, if we're His followers. And it's the same as that rabbi student or rabbi teacher, rabbi follower, disciple dynamic that they had back in the first century. In fact, listen, rabbis were held in high regard back in Jesus' day. I have a couple quotes I want to share with you from the first century about rabbis. One says this: "Your father brought you into the world, but your rabbi brings you into the life of the world to come." It's almost like the father brings you so far, and then the rabbi takes you from there and completes your life, in a sense. In fact, listen to this quote: "If your father and rabbi are taken captive, and you can only ransom one, ransom your rabbi." I mean, that's a big deal. Can you see the importance of a rabbi in Jesus' culture? It was a big deal to have that student-teacher dynamic going on there. Much different than our Western culture and our Western mindset that we have. But here's the key to discipleship, guys. Okay, if you have to write it down, write it down. Here's the key. Discipleship is not about information. It's about transformation. Discipleship is not about information. It's about transformation. It is about being with that individual. And like I said, you part your hair the same, you dress the same, and you act like them, you talk like them, your mannerisms become exactly like them, your thoughts are like them because you're with them so much you start to think like them, you start to move like them, your heart, even your morals, your values, everything all begin to shift and become like your teacher, like your rabbi. It was an incredibly big deal back in the day. If a rabbi would say, "Follow me," that was very, very sought out. I mean, you wanted that. You wanted that to happen. And so for Jesus to come along and say, "Follow me," again, it adds a little more depth now that we have some of this historical background to put into it. Jesus says, "Follow me," and they say, "Okay." But it doesn't end there, does it? Because that's exactly where it starts. It begins there. We say things today like, do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, you guys know it. We know it. That's the problem. That would have never gone in Jesus' day. Never. The rabbis wouldn't even understand what you're talking about. It's no, do as I say and do as I do. And everything you did was to look and become exactly like your teacher, like your rabbi. Okay? It's discipleship. It's all about transformation. It's not necessarily about information. So try to imagine for a moment. And if you need to close your eyes to visualize this, that's okay. You can do that. But here's the deal. You got to open them again in a minute. Okay? No sleepy. Okay? Imagine or visualize Jesus standing in front of you. Try to picture him the best you can, standing in front of you in bodily form. And he's just looking at you. He's smiling at you. There's a little bit of a gleam or a twinkle in his eye. And he doesn't even speak. He just motions with his hand. He does a waving motion towards himself. It's kind of the international symbol of come to me or follow me. That's all he does, and then he walks away from you, and he's about 15 or 20 feet away, and he turns back again, and he looks at you, and he does the same thing. He motions again toward himself, "Come follow me." That's what Jesus is saying to us. And that's at the simplest level that we can possibly put it. That's what Jesus is doing. That's what he's saying. He says, "I want you to come and I want you to live with me. I want you to do life with me. And it's not about just information. I want to transform you. I want your life completely transformed." And that's the goal of discipleship as we follow Jesus. Like we talked about last week, we walk so closely to Jesus that his light reflects off us and we shine the brightest that we possibly can, because we walk as close as we can. We become like Him. That's the goal of discipleship. That's the goal in a nutshell. So having that in mind, let me share with you a few takeaways or observations from the message today. First, discipleship is simple yet challenging. Simple. I've said that, haven't I? Not easy. Not easy. Simple. Not easy. It's simple, right? Jesus says go. You go. He says stop. You stop. He says turn right. You turn right. He says speak. You speak. He says be silent. We're silent. It's really simple. It couldn't be more simplistic than just follow what Jesus says to do and do it. And what He says we're not supposed to do, don't do those things. Again, very, very simple. Now, not easy, and don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying that we know all the mysteries of God and that, once you become a disciple, everything is wide open, because that's not the case. We know that. We know that God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. They're higher than us. And we know that there are mysteries that belong to God. So I'm not saying that we know everything once you get into that saving relationship with Jesus Christ, but it's simple in nature. It's very simplistic. Not easy. It's simple. But it's challenging. And the challenge is because, guys, we have the Spirit of God in us, and the Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. We've all heard that, right? In fact, I heard that in Sunday school even this morning. And we probably said it a million times, but what it comes down to is there's truth in that. There's a lot of truth in that. It's simple when Jesus says, don't do this. It's simple to say, I'm not going to do that. But then the flesh kicks in. And guys, listen, we are bombarded today. And we look at that 1 John 2, 16, 15, and 16, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. It is everywhere. Everywhere you look. It's even in a car commercial. For car advertising, like, yeah, I would look good in that. I deserve that. And we bring that into it. We bring it into everything. It doesn't matter if it's food or if it's, sexual images. I mean, it's everywhere, guys. We're bombarded. So it's simple, but it's challenging because we still have the fleshly nature that we have to deal with. Right? We still have to constantly say no, and we have to put on the full armor of God. We talked about this months ago. Remember, we took our pause, we did our one pause video, and I did it just for you, Steve, because I love you, brother. One pause, one message, just in the middle of the year-long sermon series, Living in the Red. We stopped and said, here's what we need to do. We need to put on the full armor of God, and here's the deal. The battle is real. You might not think it's real, but it's real. You might not think about it when you wake up in the morning and get your coffee and go ahead to work, but it's real. The enemy is seeking to absolutely destroy you at every moment, every breath you take. The battle is real, so we have to be prepared for that. So it's simple, but it's challenging. It's challenging because we're still here in the world. We deal with the fleshly nature, and so it's tough. But second, know this. Discipleship is a process. And these two, they go hand in hand. You don't have one without the other. It's a process. We want something instantly, don't we? I mean, let's just be real. I love microwave ovens. I do. I try not to stand in front of them because I was glowing after I did a couple times when they first came out, right? From back in the day. Like you walk away and you're green a little bit. Okay, maybe not. I was trying to make a joke there. But you're not supposed to stand too close to them, I guess, because, well, maybe not now. But back in the day when they're first out, I was like, yeah! I'm tapping the glass and I'm watching it spin. I was like, it's turning! And I thought that was the coolest thing. You take a burrito out of the freezer, right? It's like a brick. You bust all your teeth if you try to eat it, but you put it in the microwave 2 minutes later. Oh, soft and gooey goodness. Put some cheese on that. Put some more cheese on it. And then top it with some cheese. Right? It all melts in. It's super gooey. Okay, it's not the best food. I'm not endorsing that you go buy frozen burritos. But I'm making a point that in 2 minutes' time, you've got food right there, hot, toasty, kind of tasty-ish, pretty good. It's great, right? We live in an instant culture. Instant oatmeal. Now I love instant oatmeal, so don't even get me going on that. Instant coffees. We have drive-thrus. We have 24-hour everything, don't we? We have apps now. We have an app for an app. I mean, if you want something at 2 in the morning, you can just pull out an app and be like, yeah, yep, and here's my address, and people will bring it to you. You don't have to get out. You can just like order food in your PJs now and just sit there and hang out at the door while they deliver it. You can even pay for it and put your tip in there in the app so it's done. When they show up and they hold your hand, you're like, yeah, thanks, my brother. You can give them a high five and you can take your food and go because you already tipped them. Right? We live in this culture. We want everything right here, right now, instant. But guys, discipleship isn't one of those things that happens that way. It's a process. We don't just wake up tomorrow morning and you guys are going to be like, oh, I totally get it. Oh, where was I? I get it now, and you're going to have it all down. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't. And I know we hear stories of miraculous healings, and I would be the first one to tell you, I believe God still heals today miraculously, as He always has, and as He always will. I wholeheartedly believe that. And we love to hear stories of that. And listen, praise God for those. Praise God. When someone comes out of a drug addiction, I've heard this before. When people will come out and they've been addicted to drugs for so many years, and then they give their life to Jesus, and the next morning they get up and they don't have a single craving. None. They're just gone. And those are awesome. And again, we praise God for those moments. But listen, for every one of those individuals, there are 1,000 more who struggle with that every single day, and they battle with the temptation to go back to the drugs, or go back to the alcohol, or go back to whatever. You can fill in the blank. Because it's a process. And discipleship is the same way. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that takes place one day at a time, one step at a time, and we consistently move forward. That's the point. We have to consistently move forward in this. And I know some of you guys, you're probably even thinking, yeah, you know what? Jesus doesn't know, or I would say Jesus doesn't know necessarily, but you can say, you don't know, because that's true, because I don't know. You don't know some of the things I've done. You don't know what's in my past. I would say, yeah, you're right, I don't, but Jesus does, and He says, I'll take you. I'll take you. We sang the song last week, just as I am. That's how He takes you. He takes you just as you are, but He loves you too much to leave you just as you are. Because it's about transformation, guys, again. And some of you might think, well, there are others who have gifts, much better gifts than I have. And Jesus says, it doesn't matter. I'll take you with the gifts you have. I'll work with you. I'll do great things through you. And you might be thinking, yeah, but you don't even know what goes on in my heart. And the thoughts that I have, and sometimes the thoughts that I have, they're horrible, and they're so far against God. And Jesus says, you know what? I know that. I know that. And I'll still take you. And I'll take you, and I'll do great things through you. It's a process, guys. Something you battled with 10 years ago, you might still be battling with today. Don't beat yourself up over that. Just understand it's a process. Just be better today than you were yesterday. And that's the goal. Try to be better today than you were yesterday, and keep moving forward and stay consistent with your strides. Okay? So it's simple, yet challenging. And it's a process. And then third, last but certainly not least, with discipleship, you have to be all in. You have to be. We've talked about this. There's no middle of the road. There's no gray area. Remember, Jesus said, you're either for me or you're against me. I mean, that's cut and dry, guys. And there's no lukewarm. There's no room for lukewarm. Remember, Jesus made that clear. Because you're lukewarm, I'm going to vomit you. I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. I'm going to vomit you. You'll be cast from His presence. That's a big deal. So you can't be wishy-washy in this. You can't be middle of the road or sitting on the fence. It's not possible. You're all in, or you're not. In Luke 14, and don't turn there, I'll have it on the screen in a moment. We're not quite there yet, but in Luke 14, Jesus is speaking to a crowd. And He is going to give, in Luke 14, He gives His perspective on discipleship. Now try to put yourself in the position of someone in the crowd. Okay, again, when I practice, things go a certain way, and then when it's live, it ends up going sometimes completely different. So as I practiced this, I thought about myself. And what if I was there back in the first century, and I knew Jesus was coming to my town tomorrow? And I know my neighbor, and my neighbor hasn't seen Him or heard Him or knows anything about Him. And so I go to my neighbor and I say, man, Bob, right? His name is Bob. You expected that, of course, yes. Bob, you got to come and see this guy. You got to hear Jesus. He's going to be here tomorrow. Man, this guy, he's got great stories. You got to see him. Sometimes he feeds people. Look, he walks on water. True stuff. Walks on water, raises dead people. Come on, I know you're not doing anything. Come with me. And your neighbor's like, yeah, I'll go check him out. So he's excited. You're super spastic. You get there. You're part of the crowd. You're bunched in. You're like, hey, what's going on? Hey, Bob. Cool. Bob's there. Bob's all excited, and Jesus shows up. You're like, Bob, check it out. Jesus. And you're like really super excited, and Jesus starts to speak, and you're like, oh, hold your breath, buddy. This is going to be epic. And Jesus starts talking, and in verse 26 of Luke 14, He says this: if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Ouch! And he says those words. I think the first thought is, oh, Bob, I'm so sorry. Look, for real, man, usually this guy, he tells really great stories. It's pretty fun having him around. The Pharisees will come over here. They'll ask him questions. He'll ask them questions. They get all stumped. It's kind of fun to watch. It's pretty entertaining, but I don't know what happened today, man. I'm so sorry. Right? I mean, that would be kind of awkward. Especially, think about it, coming to church for the very first time ever, and the preacher starts preaching on that one. You know? Oh, you got to hate your father and mother. And your dog and your cat, and, it's like you're just going on with it. So you have to hate anybody and everybody, or you cannot be my follower. That's what Jesus is saying. Understand a couple of things. First of all, the Greek word for hate, it means hate. It does. I know other preachers will kind of water that down and say, it just means love less. Well, yeah, it means love less. It means hate. It does. But know this also, that Jesus, context is king. Context is everything. Okay? Jesus is trying to drive home a point. He actually uses the word hate 35 times throughout his ministry. Okay? When he's saying this in the text, he's not saying you literally have to despise other people or you can't follow me, because that would contradict everything that Jesus stands for, and the Father as well, because we are to love God, number one, right? Love others as ourselves, love our neighbors, love our enemies. It's all about love. This is one big love story. I've said that repeatedly, cover to cover. So it doesn't make sense then if you think of it that way. Jesus is just driving home a point. What he's trying to emphasize is this. If I'm not number one in your life, you can't call yourself a follower of mine. By the way, this is Jesus' perspective on discipleship. I just want to bring this up. It's not mine. Mine would be considerably easier. Mine would be like, just do your best. Just do your best and keep praying, and we'll keep praying for you, and we'll do this together. That'd be mine. But Jesus says, no, that's not good enough. He says, if there's anything or anyone in your life that is more important than me, you are not fit to be my disciple. You cannot call yourself a follower of mine. Pretty tough. So, your spouse, your parents, your children, your jobs, your hobbies, if anything is more important than Jesus, if you place more value in that than Jesus, he says, here's the deal. You cannot be my disciple. You can't call yourself my disciple because you're not truly my disciple. A follower of mine is going to put me number one in absolutely everything in their life. So you have to be number one. And then Jesus concludes all of this in verse 33. And he says this. In the same way, those of you who do not give up, what's the word? Everything. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Everything. Everything. Everything, guys. And this is Jesus' perspective. It's not mine. Again, his perspective on discipleship is if you don't give up everything, you can't even be my disciple because it doesn't fit. It doesn't connect. Listen, I think we've probably all seen the movies where there's a poker game that's taking place. Maybe it's something from the West. Western, I guess, is what we'd say. And you've got these guys sitting at the table and they're playing poker. And one guy takes all his chips and he slides them into the center and he looks at his opponent. His opponent stares at him for a second. And then he looks at his chips and he thinks for a moment. And he takes his chips, he slides them in and he says, I'm all in. Right? You've probably seen that. I don't know that he sounds like that. I'm all in. I don't know, maybe that's better. Anyways, he slides them all in. He's all in. Okay, and I don't play poker, so that's the only it's the only bit of that illustration I can share with you because I don't know the game. But slide the chips in, they're all in. That's it. That's what Jesus is calling from us. You can't hold a couple chips. There's no room for that. You can't keep back a few chips and say, I'm almost all in, but I got to keep these few chips for myself. It doesn't work that way. Jesus says all. All. He says everything, right? Give up everything. You have to give up everything or you cannot be my disciple. Is this making sense? Are we seeing the difference then between our culture and the way we look at the student-teacher dynamic compared to what Jesus is saying is required to be a follower of his? This is intense stuff. This is something, again, Jesus' perspective. It's what matters. It's what counts. It doesn't matter what I say. It matters what he says. And here's the deal, guys. Most, if not all of us in here today, we've all been called by Jesus. We've all been called to follow him. We call ourselves followers or disciples. We do. We say we're believers. You know, we use the verbiage. And I know what that means, and you all know what that means. We follow Jesus. We do the best we can to not goof up. We do the best we can to keep it simple. right? He says do, we do. He says don't, we don't. To follow, if he says speak, we speak, and silent, we stay silent. We do the best with those things. And I think we understand it's a process. I've been not trying to give this away, but I've been hinting towards it over the past months, that it's a process. It's something that we do day in and day out. We don't get it immediately. It doesn't happen right away. But the key to it is we can't hold back any chips. And so if you're claiming to be a follower of Jesus, you can't sit there and say, I have a few chips that I'm going to hold for myself, because Jesus says that doesn't work. You cannot call yourself a follower of mine. So it's a pretty big deal. So here's the deal. Here's how this all works out then, guys. If you are here this morning, and you are because I'm looking right at you, and you claim to be a follower of Jesus, and you do because I'm looking right at you, then this should weigh pretty heavy upon your heart. That this isn't one of those light messages that we just kind of take and we get excited about and we leave, but this is something that hopefully that we get excited about, but at the same time understanding it's a process. It is. But again, keeping it simple. Keep it simple. You can't hold chips back for yourself. You just can't do it. Jesus says it's not going to happen. That's not what I'm looking for. You got to be all in. All in, 100%. So if you're here as a disciple, as a follower, that is you're claiming to follow Jesus,